Welcome. This is March the 9th, 2025. I'm with Pannobhasa in North Carolina. He was a Buddhist monk for 30 years. Now he's in lay life. So welcome, Pannobhasa. Good to see you again.
Hail, Brian and Kat.
Thank you. I want to ask you a question. I hear a lot in the UFO community. I'm on these Zooms with a lot of other people in the UFO community. They say that the past, present, and future is all happening at the same time. There's just one time, and with your mind, somehow you can get to this higher level, and that the present, past, and future, that's just an illusion. Time doesn't exist. Hear that a lot. Time doesn't exist. The past, present, future all exist at the same time. So what would be a Theravada Buddhist response to this?
Well, from the Theravada point of view, like Orthodox Theravada, all that exists is the present moment. The future absolutely doesn't exist. The past absolutely doesn't exist. All that exists is now. But then again, Theravada is closely related to Sarvastivada, which is an ancient school that split away from Theravada like during the time of the Emperor Ashoka. So, I mean, they're relatively closely related. And the Sarvastivadins believe that time is pretty much the way Einstein explained it, where past, present, and future all exist, even though due to the limitations of our perception and so forth, we're only aware of this one cross section of time that's, moving, it's changing from one moment to the next. And I would have to agree more with the whole idea that past, present, and future all exist than the Theravadan Orthodox point of view that only the present moment exists. But just because past, present, and future all exist doesn't necessarily mean that you could necessarily see the future, because it may be that there's an infinite number of futures and an infinite number of present moments and an infinite number of pasts. And so, it's like we were mentioning in a different video, how it's like your mind will collapse down all the infinite possibilities into just one possibility. And so, I mean, if we're doing that, then you can't really predict what the future is going to be, because there's going to be all this various possibilities of futures, because there's an infinite number of futures that are all equally real. And we're just kind of steering a course largely unconsciously, just through the power of our own karma, like semi-consciously, just kind of stumbling in one direction, when really, I mean, it's not the only possible direction. And so just because you've got somebody who can really see the future, that doesn't mean that they're going to see the same future that we're going to wind up in. It's just they're seeing a possible future that we just wind up not there, because of like quantum randomness, or whatever you want to call it.
Okay, from the Theravada perspective, that only the present moment exists. That means the past, it did happen. It did happen. It doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. But that's not the same as saying that the present and the past and the future are all happening at the same time. Like from Theravada view, it's not happening at the same time. It's gone now. There is no past.
Well, I mean, we don't really have words to describe like all at the same time. I mean, in a way, past, present, and future all exist, even though they don't exist now. Only the present exists now. But somehow, it's like Einsteinian, the theory that time is the fourth dimension. So, I mean, ultimately, it's no different from the three dimensions of space. It's just that we perceive it differently, because we're just kind of upgraded apes and don't have, perfect awareness of our surroundings, kind of a thing.
I think that's what people mean in the universe, in the UFO community, that time is the fourth dimension. So if you can bring your consciousness, or if you can be in the fourth dimension, then you can see the past, present, and future. But that doesn't make sense to me, that you can see the future because of causality, right? I think from a Buddhist view, there's the chain of causality. Causality is changing the future, so you can't predict what the future is going to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, like in the suttas, sometimes the Buddha will make a prophecy. Like, he was going through some small town, like, I think it was Pataliputa, or maybe it's going to be called Pataliputa later. And he like makes this prophecy that this is going to become the capital of a great empire. And then later it became the capital of the Mauryan Empire. But
I didn't know that. Wow.
According to the commentaries, it's like the Buddha couldn't really see the future, because the future doesn't exist. So what the Buddha had to do is, he was omniscient. And so he would just extrapolate. But still, I mean, that would seem to rule out like free will to the extent of determinism. I mean, he could only extrapolate if determinism was true, and in other suttas he rules out determinism also. So it's sort of like the commentarial tradition is the one that decided that only the present moment exists, and that the Buddha couldn't really see the future because the future just doesn't exist. You can't see what doesn't exist.
But I thought there was also sutta when the Buddha said, no one can understand the limits of the mind of a Buddha or someone in jhana, that because he's the Buddha, we can't put limits on his abilities. Maybe he can see that particular future event.
Yeah, but still, I mean, I don't think any prophet has ever been 100% accurate simply because there is an infinite number of futures. You know, there's more than just four dimensions, too. I mean, you can say there's three dimensions of space, and then there's one dimension of time. But I mean, there's just an arbitrary number of other dimensions that we're just too primitive to be aware of. You know, there could be dimensions of like probability. You know, you move sideways through time and you're going into a different future. You know, so like all these different, you can change directions through time and you wind up in like different scenarios, you know, different, you know, it's like the Germans win World War II, or the Germans win World War I, or, you know, the meteor, the asteroid just barely missed the earth and the dinosaurs didn't go extinct and all this kind of stuff. There's all these different possible worlds, like the many worlds hypothesis, which is some hypothesis in science. So, yeah, I'm still skeptical of I mean, with regard to the really likely futures, you know, where almost all the possibilities are going to be still going in that same direction. You know, all the outliers, you can just kind of ignore the statistically unlikely outliers, and you know, it's like, you know, a million possible futures are all kind of the same thing. It's just that some butterfly over in Afghanistan flew left instead of right, you know, but everything else is essentially the same, that kind of thing. So, I mean, you could see the future like with relatively high accuracy, even if there are an infinite number of futures, simply because you're going with the statistically most likely one. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the way science works too. It's like when the electron goes from point A to point B, you know, it goes by every possible route and they're all equally real. And it's just that when you perceive it, you collapse it down, and almost always you collapse it down into one of the statistically most likely routes. So, I mean, you could see the future that way. It's one of an infinite number of futures, but it's statistically the most likely one really to happen, just based on everyone's karma and everything. You know, we're all kind of going in that direction. So that's probably the one we're going to wind up in. But I
Okay.
don't know if I've never heard of any psychic or prophet that had a 100% accuracy rate. And even the psychics that you see on TV or whatever, they say, "Oh, I've got a 93%." And then when they make a prophecy on the show, then you know that's in the 7% of the ones they miss. I mean, you know, their accuracy really isn't all that good. And then even
Yeah.
like in the Bible, the prophecies in the Bible, the prophecies in sacred scriptures all over the world, as a general rule, the accuracy rate really isn't very high. Unless the prophecy is a fake prophecy that was written after the events that the prophet is prophesying. You know, it's like the book of Daniel, where Daniel supposedly is living in very ancient times, and he's predicting with 100% accuracy everything that comes up to about the time of the Greek king Antiochus Epiphanes. Is 100% accurate up until you get to Antiochus Epiphanes, and then it starts going wildly inaccurate. So then the Bible scholars know that the book of Daniel was probably composed around the time of Antiochus Epiphanes,
Yeah.
where the prophecies are fake. You know, they're just sort of, you know, retconned, you know, where into the past, where those are 100% accurate. But then it's like when the prophecies stop being 100% and start being wildly inaccurate, then you have a pretty good idea that's when that scripture was composed, or that's when that prophecy was composed.
Yeah, I recently had Dr. Richard Carey on as guest. He's world-renowned, you know, historian who believes that Jesus never existed. That's a whole other conversation. But I think he's saying a similar thing, that the
Yeah.
fulfillment of prophecies. I mean, they were writing it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I mean, with regard to the New Testament, they're just kind of like doctoring the biography of Jesus to make them fit the prophecies. You know, like
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
born in Bethlehem and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I know Nazareth, I think it didn't exist for at least 100 years after Jesus was born. So that was a mistake they made.
Hmm.
But back to the time, where do people get this idea that the past, present, and future is all happening at the same time? Is that a particular Hindu belief, or where do you think they got that idea from? Because it's common in
Well,
the UFO community. I don't know what to say to these people.
like I said, the Sarvastivada Buddhists believed it, and that was back in like 3rd century BCE.
They
So
thought
it
it was
goes
all happening at the same time.
well. That's what Sarvastivada means, is all exists. So future, present, and past all exist simultaneously in a sense, even though we're only aware of a present moment that's constantly changing. So they
Oh,
still did believe that the future really does exist in a sense already, and the past continues to exist in a sense, even though we can't see them like with the regular meat eyes and so forth.
yeah. I think
But it
these
could
people are
be that
saying that you can
someone who is
experience
like an
it.
enlightened being might be able to be more aware of this stuff.
Yeah, I think they're saying you can actually still experience the past since it's happening right now. You can experience the past in the future. They're saying. So you're saying the Savastivardens may have gone along with that idea?
Yeah, they had pretty much of an Einsteinian point of view where time is like the 4th dimension. And it's like it's sort of like, if you're driving down a road, you're only aware of that part of the road that you're at. But just because you've passed something 5 miles back doesn't mean that it doesn't exist anymore. And just because you haven't gotten to something that's 5 miles down the road, that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist yet. It's already there. You just haven't got there yet.
Yeah, okay. So the Theravadins are saying, well, the present moment exists and the past did exist, but it doesn't exist now. It's gone. And the future doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's the official Orthodox Theravada Buddhist point of view, which I don't think is in the suttas. I think it's just in like Buddhaghosa's commentaries. But that's like
Okay.
official Theravada doctrine.
It's the official Theravada doctrine that the future will result because of causation. Causation keeps rolling on, and then 10 years from now, the reality of that time will be the result of causation.
Yeah, pretty much. Although I guess the idea that time, like the future doesn't exist and the past doesn't exist, is found in Abhidhamma. It's found in the Kata Watu, which is one of the books of Abhidhamma. So it's in the Tipitaka, but I don't think it's in the suttas. I think it's just in like Abhidhamma and commentaries and just kind of later material that early Buddhism probably didn't teach it. It's just that that's what the early Theravada Buddhist philosophers decided on.
So, what about the Buddha in the suttas? What do you think he said about time then?
Well, I think the Buddha himself, I mean, he wasn't making a lot of claims about this is the way it is, because the highest truth you can't put in words. So the Buddha was just teaching you how to practice meditation and like renunciation and morality and so forth, so that you can become enlightened and see the truth for yourself. And because you can't really put the highest truth into words. It's like someone who's never tasted vanilla before. They want to know what vanilla tastes like. You can't explain to them what vanilla tastes like. You can just explain and explain and explain. You'll still won't be able to tell them what vanilla tastes like. I mean, you could like give them all these like biochemistry books that explain how the vanilla molecule interacts with your taste buds, and the neural impulse is like sent to the olfactory lobe of your brain and all that, and they can understand all that, but still they're not going to know what vanilla tastes like until they actually taste vanilla. So if someone wants to know what vanilla tastes like, the only thing you can really do is tell them to get a hold of some vanilla and taste it, and then they'll know. And that's what the Buddha was doing with regard to ultimate truth. You can't put it into words. You just have to tell them how to experience it for themselves.
Yeah, and I think the Buddha wasn't trying to explain the universe, explain science. He was concerned with teaching the nature of suffering and the path into suffering. Just those two things:
Yeah,
suffering
how to
and
liberate
suffering.
yourself from the simulation, how to get
Yeah,
out
so
of
he
the
wasn't.
matrix.
Yeah, he wasn't trying to explain past, present, and future. Like that wasn't. It's more
Yeah, that
about.
kind of stuff, like metaphysical stuff, he pretty much avoided that. And if you find it in the suttas, there's a good chance that it's just some later Buddhist philosopher putting it into the Buddha's mouth.
Yeah, yeah, he discourages monks from wasting their time with too much metaphysics. That's right.
Yeah, it's like one of the questions that he wouldn't answer is, does the earth world have a beginning and an end, or does it not have a beginning and an end? It's like, is the world eternal or is it finite? That kind of thing. He just wouldn't even go there. He wouldn't. He
Yeah.
just refused to answer the question.
Okay. So from the perspective of conventional reality and ultimate reality, maybe it's possible from a fourth dimension that past, present, and future uh, does exist or can be perceived in some way, possibly.
From a conventional point of view, but it wouldn't be ultimately real because it's all mind made. Because like time and space aren't ultimately real, like we were discussing in the simulation discussion. That it's all kind of a projection. It's just sort of like this fake reality that we're creating just so we'll have some way of existing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I guess the future thing, they can't really know the future because, like you're saying, the future can change. There can be lots of different futures.
Yeah, there's an infinite number of possible futures. I mean, you can like a good prophet or a psychic might just always pick the statistically most likely one so that they'll have a high accuracy rate. But still, I mean, they're never going to be 100% accurate. Especially the farther you predict into the future, the more chances of things going sideways are gonna come along.
Yeah. Even like a month from now, these people say that the past, present, and future is all happening at once. Be impossible for any of them to somehow, even in their fourth dimension, explain what's going to happen a month from now. They really
Yeah,
can't
and
do
then
that.
there's some people that apply that to like rebirth and saying, well, because past, present, and future all exist, you can take your next rebirth into the past, that kind of thing. And I'm not exactly sure how that would work. My father used to believe that too. He wanted to get reborn in the Stone Age, but I don't know if that's even really a possibility.
Yeah, these people say past, present, future all at once. Some of them will say, yeah, you can take rebirth in the past,
Yeah, but I'm not sure how that would work. It's like I can't wrap my mind around that one.
But I think the Orthodox Theravada view is no, you can't go back in time and take rebirth back in time.
Yeah, I think that would be the Orthodox Theravadan point of view. That is just the time that the past is already gone, so you can't go back there.
Because if you could, then that could change our present now, change our causality now, which would really screw things up.
Yeah, or it's all predetermined, in which case you go into the past and have your past life, which has already happened, even though it's like your next life. You go into the past, but you can't change anything because it'd be all like determinism. It'd be like fate or destiny, where you just can't change anything.
So even if it went back just before the Kennedy assassination, 1963, somehow there's no way you can change it because that's happened and that's the way it's got to be.
No, although the Trump administration is now saying that there was probably a second gunman.
Yeah, he signed the order to release it, but that hasn't actually been released yet. That's another conversation, but I don't think we're going to hear much more. Yeah, the second government, and even in 1978, the House Select Committee assassinations, even then they said there's a 95% chance of a conspiracy, and that there was they had a tape recording of a shot, at least one shot from the front, because the Dallas
Yeah.
police officer had his microphone on. It's being recorded at Dallas headquarters. So even in 78, they determined that. So they officially had two different stories, but that's a whole other 3-hour conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't even need to get to the Epstein stuff.
Yeah, so I guess we covered past, present, future. I don't buy it that it's all happening at the same time. But who knows from a higher dimension, eh? But still the future, maybe the past and the present, but not the future. We can't pin it down, I would say.
Yeah, or I mean, there's just an infinite number of them. So I mean, you can pin one down, and it's definitely a future, but it's just not the one we're going to wind up in. At least this version of us. I mean, it could be that. I mean, we're splitting into various possibilities all the time. I mean, that's another possibility that there's just an infinite number of us all living similar lives. And every time you make a decision, there's like a split. You turn into two yous. One of you makes this decision, one of you makes the other one. It's like you're standing there. Am I going to wear the red tie or the blue tie? then it's like the universe splits in half, and one version of you picks the blue tie and the other version of you picks the red tie, and this it just keeps happening like that. So you've got this infinite number of worlds where every time anybody makes a decision, anytime there's some kind of quantum randomness that allows more than one possibility, it's like all of them are fulfilled. And so it becomes so complicated that, I mean, a human mind can't really wrap around it or figure it out. It's
Yeah.
just like infinitely complex.
In this reality, I chose my bow tie to have something different for
Yeah,
each
yeah.
day.
You look like James Bond with that thing on.
Thank you. I actually got the idea from Dr. E. Michael Jones, a famous Catholic scholar. I did a few videos with him, and he wore bow ties. So a friend of mine had a few extra bow ties he gave me, so I thought I'll just be different. I have, like I said, I have to compensate for my average intelligence with my virtual backgrounds and my bow tie.
Yeah. Yeah, looks good.
So I guess even the one feature we can't pin down is the lottery numbers coming up next week. We can't even manage that.
Well, I mean, you might be able to have some psychic look into the future and see what the lottery numbers are, but I mean, that's not necessarily the future world you're going to wind up in. It could be we take a sidestep and wind up with different numbers.
Yeah, I don't go for
Because
lottery
I mean, the
tickets.
world isn't just four-dimensional. I mean, you don't just stop there. You just keep. I mean, it could have an infinite number of dimensions for all we know. As many dimensions as any kind of sentient but still unenlightened mind can cook up. It may be that some alien races, I mean, they're like 9-dimensional or whatever, and still they're not omniscient or anything. They're still limited by those 9 dimensions.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think they're fully enlightened. I still think of the Buddha as higher than these ETs that I admire so much. I don't think of them as fully complete enlightened like the Buddha. I still put the Buddha higher.
Yeah. And I mean, I want to mention this just because I heard it on the radio like 3 nights ago, 2 or 3 nights ago. It was some talk show, and they talk about like paranormal stuff and UFOs and this kind of thing. And
You
there
were
was this
listening to my
guy.
BitChute channel? Was that what you're listening
No,
to?
there was this guy who was saying that Elon Musk has become a totally different person now because he put Neuralink into himself, and then AI took over his mind and his body, and that he is interacting with some aliens that are orbiting the star Sirius that have set up some alien technology on the moon that steals people's souls after they die. So there's a special name for this. It's like some kind of conspiracy theory where it's like alien technology on the moon is like after you die, your soul kind of floats up, and then this alien technology grabs that soul and sends it back to Sirius for putting into some kind of computerized car or something. I don't know, and that. Because Sirius is also called the dog star, that's why Elon Musk, who's interacting with these aliens from Sirius, has called this Department of Government Efficiency Doge, because really it's like doggy. It's not Doge, it's doggy. And then he's got like Starlink, which is another one of the projects he's working on. That's also referring to the star Sirius. So it all adds up. They had this whole system worked out. And I mean, the guy was absolutely sure that he was right, or at least it sounded like he was absolutely sure that he was right. But I mean, just because you're sure that you're right with regard to something that you can't possibly prove, I mean, it's best to just keep it at the level of a hypothesis, because I mean, clinging on to a belief is what's keeping us in samsara.
Wow, so
It's
that's the
keeping us
reality.
in.
Wow.
It's keeping us in the simulation. So long as you're clinging to any aspect of the simulation, it keeps you stuck there. And that includes just firmly believing something, and which can include things that you can't possibly know for sure. Like most religious beliefs are things that you can't really know for sure. You're just following along with what everyone around you is believing.
Well, I won't give up on the Buddha for doggy. I'm going to stick with the Buddha, take my refuge. But still, it's an uncertainty. We still have to make our own decisions.
Yeah, and you're better off just not clinging to any view, because like Ajahn Chah said, even right view becomes wrong view if you cling to it.
Yeah, yeah. But still, the Dharma is a good view to have. The Buddha's suttas is a good view to start with, and then
Yeah,
work
I mean,
it out for yourself.
it's like the raft made of rubbish that you used to cross the flood, and then you let go of it after you've gotten across the flood with it. It's just convenient. It works. You know, it's
Yeah.
just a convenient working hypothesis, but still clinging to it just keeps you stuck.
Yeah, I like that idea of a bundle of sticks you fasten together under your chest. You don't even know how to swim, but you're
Yeah,
pushing
you
with
just
your hands
paddle
and your feet,
across.
trying to get. Yeah, that's a good analogy, good simile. Yeah. Okay. Anything else to past, present, and future? I guess we've covered it all. Any last words of wisdom, pannobhasa?
No, I think that's about it. I think we did. I think we addressed the issue
Very good.
adequately.
Well, thank you kindly then. Very good. See you next time.
Yeah.